Now it's time. Usually the clock gets slower, not faster, but that one has sped up. Or either somebody did that to try to get me to finish earlier. Who did that? Oh. I've gotten pretty good at reading Laura's sign language. All right. Well, we are on page 18 in our books on church attendance. And we had just talked about Hebrews 10:25 last week. The little bit of time we had between finishing the last lesson and moving on to this one, we were able to talk about Hebrews 10:25. So we'll go to the next point there. Under importance of assembling, we talked about not to forsake the assembly. And Acts chapter 20 and verse 7 is where we find one of the several approved examples for the church to meet on the first day of the week. Can you think of a place where we have the explicit command to assemble on the first day of the week? I mean, we talked about not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together, and I think we could apply that as a command to assemble on the first day of the week, but really the command there is for us to be together, us not to forsake being together. There's not really anything in Hebrews 10:25 that specifies the first day of the week. It's when we put together the rest of the information from the New Testament about when the church assembled. But is that the only time we see the church assembled is on the first day of the week when we go through the New Testament?
No.
No. We see a whole lot of references to day by day, house to house, right? They spent time together. And that's an important principle for the church today. Who are we more likely to be like? If we pick up mannerisms, and you ever heard it said that people that have been married for a long time kind of act alike and respond alike to the same thing? Some people say they even start to look alike. Now, I was already pretty before I met Mary, but if being married to Mary made me more pretty, then okay, I'll take it. But who are we most likely to be like, to copy, to pick up characteristics from?
People we spend more time with.
Who we spend more time with, right? So doesn't it make sense that if we spend more time with the world than we do with the church, then we're going to be more worldly than godly? I mean, that just makes sense, doesn't it? And that's, I'm sure I'm getting ahead of myself in the outline. Let me see if it's in the outline. I don't think it's in the outline, so you can put it in the outline. 1 Corinthians 15:33. Right? What does Paul say there? If you have that, go ahead and read it. 1 Corinthians 15:33.
Evil company corrupts good habits.
Right?
That's my husband's favorite verse.
Yeah, that's right. You better quit hanging around with them. Right? He says, do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. I think the King James says corrupts good morals. Right? Why do you suppose Paul said there, do not be deceived, before he said that? Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits.
Because we think we can handle it.
Because, right, we think that we can associate with worldly people, we can engage in worldly activities, we can kind of cozy up to the world, and we even make excuses for it, don't we? Like, well, we have to spend time with people in the world to influence people in the world, right? Well, not the kind of time you're talking about, right? Yeah, we do have to associate with people. We have to be friendly with people. We have to be good neighbors, and that's what we're supposed to do. That's the way we're supposed to spread the gospel. But is that the same thing as being close companions with worldly people?
No.
Right? What does Romans 12:10 say? And I know I'm jumping around I'm adding to the passages that are in the lesson. And I think these things pertain to church attendance, right? If evil company corrupts good morals or corrupts good habits, then what's the alternative to that? And it's really the context of 1 Corinthians 15. What's the alternative to evil companions? Good companions, right? Godly companions, godly people. We want to be around, or we should want to be around people that, well, I guess I could say we do. We put ourselves around people. It's not something we should do or want to do, or we do it. It's just natural that we hang around people that are like-minded with us. That's why we have sayings like, if you want to know about somebody, look at who they run with, look at who their friends are, right? If we're hanging around and we find closer association with people in the world, then what does that say about our mindset? That we're probably more worldly than we are spiritual, right? Now again, we're supposed to be good friends to people. We're supposed to be good neighbors. All of those things are true. We are supposed to influence the world by our presence in the world, okay? But that's not the same thing as making your companionship with the world, right? It's not the same thing. When it comes to our close companionship, who should our closest companions be? Who should our closest associates be? Right? And I pointed out Romans 12:10. Does somebody have Romans 12:10 out?
Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor.
Give preference to one another. What translation is that?
New American Standard.
Okay. Give preference to one another. That's a good translation. The New King James says, "Be kindly affectionate to one another, preferring one another." Right? Well, in honor, preferring one another. What does it mean to prefer one another? That's who I'd rather be with, right? That's my preference. That's my preference of company. I want to be people. I want to be with people that use sound speech. I don't want to be around people that every other word out of their mouth is blasphemous, right? I don't want to be around that. So, who we're most comfortable around? I am by far, much more comfortable in this room than I would be in any other room with any other people anywhere. Because I know the people in this room think like I think, have the same goal that I have, hold the same values that I do. I can be comfortable with this group of people. I don't have to worry about getting canceled, so to speak, right? You say the wrong thing in front of some people and they're ready to march you out to the gallows, It seems like every day you hear about, some star, a lot of comedians, the people that are getting blasted, getting canceled, right? And they're not content to just cancel a show or to give a bad review to a movie, or they're not content with that. They want to destroy people's livelihoods, right? And it's been going on for too long. And one of the best responses I've heard to it is, and I forget who it was that even said it, but it's true, right? How do people typically react? How would most of us react if somebody said to us that something we said offended them or was very hurtful? What would be our almost immediate response to that? I'm sorry, right? Okay, but what if they're saying that something we said that was true and right and accurate was hurtful or offensive or however they want to put it? Are we going to apologize for the truth?
Apologize for hurting you.
Right? Or do what?
Try to get them to agree with you.
Right? You're going to try to at least show them that, I didn't say that to offend you. I didn't say that to target you or to, make you feel bad, or that wasn't my motivation for saying that. I said it because it's true, right? If I say that it is a biological fact that there are two genders and you don't get to pick which gender you are, there are people who say that that is a hateful, insensitive, bigoted, even racist. I've heard it called racist statement. Well, how so? I mean, it's either a fact or it's not. If it's not a fact, show me it's not a fact. Right? If it is a fact, why does this fact, this fact of biology, this fact of nature, why does that offend you? Why does that? So the response usually, because we're kind-hearted people, we don't want to be mean, we don't want to hurt people's feelings. That's not our intention. We don't want to do that, so we apologize. And what happens when you apologize? Oh, so you knew you were doing it. You're apologizing because you knew when you said it that it was going to be hurtful. Right? So now you can't even apologize. Because apologizing is acknowledging the fact of the crime or what have you. That's why insurance companies tell you when you have a wreck, don't ever get out and apologize and tell them that it was all your fault, or you let the police determine that, right? The insurance company does not want you getting out of the car apologizing to the other person because they don't want to pay for the wreck, right? And if you get out and apologize to the other person for hitting them, and that person says, well, the first thing they did when they got out of the car was apologize for hitting me, well then, case closed. It's your fault. You admitted it, right? They don't want you to do that, right? So they take that apology, I'm sorry if what I said hurt your feelings, right? Is that an apology for what I said?
No.
It really shouldn't be an apology. Now you might say, I'm sorry you feel that way, right? Because that is sorrowful. That is bad. That you can't say something that is a fact without somebody getting upset over it. And they want to cancel that. So why do I want to be around, why do I want to be in a setting where I have to be careful about saying things that are true and good and right and facts? Where if you stand up for the truth and you advocate, for the true way things are, you insist that I'm going to live in reality. I'm not going to live in your fantasy world. I'm going to live in reality. And now you have to worry about, these people trying to destroy your livelihood. I promise you, right now, there are those who would love nothing more than to come in here and to be able to say, you cannot say what you're saying, and if you don't stop, we're going to put you in a jail cell. I have no doubt in my mind, to a slightest degree, that there are people that want that to happen. Okay? Why would I want to be around people like that? Right? So, if where I'm supposed to be, where I should want to be, my desire to be, is with people that are like-minded, then why is it so hard to get people to assemble at the opportunities that we have to be together and assemble together? Right? It's because the mindset is not right. It's more important for me to be with these other people that are not Christians, that are not moral, that I would not like to admit how like-minded I actually am with them. Right? But that's why you're there instead of here, right? I mean, that's a fact. Again, not trying to be hurtful, not trying to be mean, but that's a fact. When it's a matter of choice, and it's not always a matter of choice, and so of course when we're talking about attendance, we're talking about exercising the choice to attend, right? Sometimes, I know many of us have had situations where it wasn't a choice for us. You know, we were not able to make that choice to be in the assembly, and that's not forsaking the assembly. Forsaking the assembly is when it is a choice and you choose to do something else. That's forsaking the assembly, right?
I think this is one of the biggest problems with the church today. When we baptize a new person, we seem to drop them right there. We need to take that person in under our wing, so to speak, and help them to realize what they've got to do.
Well, who is we?
The Christians, members of the church.
Not me.
Not 100%, but they're still, you just don't see it done as much as you used to.
You know, I've heard that said a lot, that, you know, we neglect new converts. I can honestly say, in all sincerity and in pure conscience, I guess, I don't know how to say it, but I have never studied with somebody and baptized somebody that I did not make every reasonable effort to follow up with that person. Never. So, you know, I've heard that said a lot, that we baptize people and then leave them sitting on the bank, as it were. But I've never done that. 9 times out of 10, what has happened, even though I was very explicit, and anybody that has studied with me that I have gotten to the point of baptism, any of them would be able to say this. I have always emphasized the need to continue, right? I have never baptized anybody that could rationally have the idea that this is, you know, this is the fulfillment of what I need to do. I've never given anybody that impression. I hope I never have anyway, and certainly not intentionally. I've never given anybody that impression. I've always said that when you're baptized into Christ, that's the beginning point. That's where you start your Christian walk. And we have to continue studying. A lot of the Bible studies that I have are with people who are already members of the church, because that's my function. I'm supposed to make myself available to people who want to study and who want to grow and want to know more. And so when a member of the church comes to me and says, you know, I want to study this, or I want to study that, or I need to know more about this, or I need to know more about that, I'm always available, right? I do that. It'd be wrong for me not to. But I would say, I don't know if 9 times out of 10 would be too high. I don't think so. You know, 8, maybe. I think if I say 8 times, somewhere between 8 to 9, you know, there's that half a person in there, you know, here and there. But by far, it's much more common, regardless of what I taught them up to baptism. And I always teach people that you come up out of baptism a new person, and you have to start from there, continue growing, continue learning, continue studying. I have never cut off a Bible study with somebody because they got baptized, right? As a matter of fact, if it was somebody that I was studying with on a regular schedule and they got baptized, I never gave any indication at all that our study was done. It's the last thing I've said to them as we parted after their baptism. Every single time has been, I'll see you Thursday, or I'll see you, Tuesday, or whenever our study is scheduled, The study continues, right? Because now we study with a different focus. Not to get into Christ, but to live in Christ. That's our focus now. And so, I've never done that. But what has happened much more often than not is the person may continue for, 1, 2, if I even get another study with them. I mean, there's numerous times when I baptize somebody and I've emphasized that, the continuing to study is very important, and even after all of that emphasis, after they're baptized, they cancel before we even get to the next study because they think they're done. And certainly not because I gave them that idea, but they have that idea for whatever reason. And it's usually, maybe 1 or 2 studies after they're baptized, and then, they kind of start missing, we'll have a study, and then they'll miss a couple of studies, and we'll have another study, and they'll, and it kind of goes on like that until, they just stop coming altogether. So I've heard that said a lot. And when I hear that said, the only thing I can think is that there are, members of the congregation or other preachers. I don't know if I could name any other preachers that do that. But that there's, these people somewhere that when they baptize somebody, they say, okay, I'm done with you. I haven't seen it. What I've seen much more often than that is the person that got baptized says, they're done. I remember I baptized a husband and wife one time. I think our studies were on Tuesdays. And I baptized this husband and wife, and I said, about attending the services, and we had already studied about attending the services before they got baptized. But then, of course, after I baptized them, I said, the Bible class is, the next time, the next opportunity you have to be together with the church so that the church can be edified by your obeying the gospel is Wednesday night. It'll be great to see you there Wednesday night. Wednesday night came, they didn't come. Sunday came, they didn't come. I got there the next Tuesday to follow up with our Bible study, and the man came out and stood next to my car door so I couldn't open the car door. Stood close enough to the car so that I couldn't open the door. And I rolled the window down and I said, I'm here for our Tuesday study. He said, we don't want to study with you anymore. I said, why? What's going on? He said, I don't want to talk about it. We just don't want to study with you anymore. And I thought, well, what can I do? Should I jump out of the car and say, tough, you're studying, sit down and be quiet? I can't do that, right? So I don't know what happened to them between the time because we had a great study. They responded to the gospel. But sometime between the time I left them Tuesday and I came back the next Tuesday, something had happened. And most likely what it was is they started calling around family and friends and saying, oh, we got baptized. And they said, what are you talking about? You're already a member of this church or whatever. And they said, no, we were baptized in the Church of Christ. And the person said, oh, you did what? And it was a horrible tragedy that they got baptized in the Church of Christ, right? And so I see that happen a lot, and it's sad and tragic, but I haven't seen very many. I don't know that I could name one. A situation where either myself or someone I know baptized someone and then just said, okay, I'm done. I don't know of a case where that's happened. Other than, like I said, they stopped it because they thought they were done. And so You know, sometimes it might be a problem with the way that we present it to people, and we say or do something that contributes to that idea that once they get baptized, they're done. I have tried to be very careful to never give that impression. I don't think anybody that has heard me preach or teach very much at all would be able to say that Norm thinks when you're baptized you're done. I think if somebody were to walk up to any of you and to say that, you would say, "Wait, are we talking about the same Norm? You know, about yay high, kind of, you know, on the fleshy side, a bald guy, right? We're talking about that same guy, right? Because you know that would I would hope anyway that any of you that heard that would say, no, I don't think that's right." But
Well, Norm,
uh-huh.
the parable of the sower kind of shows exactly what we run into today.
Right.
Some fell on the rocky ground. Some were eaten up by the weeds,
Mm-hmm.
pulled right back in. Birds ate some of the seed, and only a certain amount actually was able to take root and make a plant.
1/4, right?
Only 1/4 of that, and we've experienced situations where they would come in, we would teach them. As soon as they got home, they would call up their mother, father, whatever, and find out, you know, Aunt Sue is a preacher somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You know, a woman preacher.
Right.
And
Yeah, that happens a lot. And you know, and typically what I tell people when, you know, when they come back to me and say, "Well, you know, I talked to my, you know, brothers, sisters, cousins, second boyfriend's fiance, and this is what their pastor said."
Right.
I every time I say, "Well, why don't we schedule a meeting with me and you and that pastor, that preacher, and we can all sit down together and talk, because what that person is telling you about what I said, you know that's not what I said, and so why don't we all sit down together and talk about it?" And sometimes they will try to do that, and every time the other person says, "No, I'm not sitting talking with him," right? Every time. And sometimes they'll come back and they'll say, "Well, you know, they're not willing to talk to you, and that, you know, that bothers me," and so, you know, and then they will, you know, move along with their study.
I've only known really 2 instances where they were able to overcome the family.
Right.
Because the family influence is about as strong as it's going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we had one lady come forward one time. She was baptized, never showed up again.
Mm-hmm.
We checked on her, and she said, "Well, I was baptized. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right.
I don't need to come to church. I've been baptized."
Right.
Well, we tried to explain, you know, there's no such thing as once saved, always saved.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why I try to be very careful during the course of the study, that they know that when they're baptized, that's not the end of what they're supposed to do. That's the beginning of what this study we're having right now. That's to get you to the starting line. Then the race really starts, and then you start running the Christian race. And you know, sometimes the person is receptive to that, and they do want to continue studying and continue growing. Many times, you know, like you said, like I think is in it's the kind of pattern that the Bible reveals to us, with, you know, the fact that there's always a minority of people that want the truth, love the truth. The sad fact is that the majority of people don't want to know the truth. They're happy. They're happier, more satisfied, and more comfortable believing their comfortable lie than they are hearing the truth. They would rather not hear the truth, because then, you know, once you hear it, then you got to deal with it. So they would just rather not hear it at all, and that's very sad. So I think part of the problem is that we don't emphasize enough being together. I think we could do a lot more about being together. I know, I don't want to cook, and well, I mean, bring food then. You don't have to cook. Bring something. I don't care what it is. I'll eat it, right? I'm not picky. If you bring it, I'll eat it. I don't care if it's from Sonny's barbecue or from your kitchen. I could care less. I just want to eat it, right? I want to eat it with you, right? I could go there and eat by myself. I want to eat it with you, right? So, I mean, we need to do things that are more. That's why we have a deacon of fellowship activities, right? And Ron comes up to me and he says, we want to get together and have a gathering, maybe family game night or whatever. There's been various ideas that have been brought up, and it seems like it never really comes to fruition. Something always comes up. And you think about that. Why do you suppose that is? That something always comes up to hinder us being together.
Satan's busy.
You think it scares the devil for us to be together? Yeah, it scares him to death. He's terrified. The devil is absolutely paralyzed with fear that we spend time together and get stronger by spending time together, right? That's really what we're talking about when we talk about church attendance. I mean, Sunday's a given, right? Even people who are very casual in their thinking about church attendance, they will acknowledge that, yeah, I'm supposed to be there on Sunday, right? Okay, well, what about the other 6 days of the week? And I know you've heard me say before that one of the great blessings of being a preacher is I get to be around Christians every day, right? Maybe a couple of days out of the week. One, my day off, because I go and I close myself in a room and I tell everybody to leave me alone. Right? Not really, but close. I take my day off when I do just want to be. Sometimes I want to be by myself, and sometimes I want to just be with my family, and so we all have days like that. But what about the other 5-6 days of the week? What are we doing that we can't make time to be together with our brothers and sisters in Christ? Why don't we want to? Do you think maybe one of the hindrances for making closer relations in the church, one of the hindrances is that we're afraid of what someone might see in our house or hear in our house or encounter in, I think that, there are those who are concerned about that, if we spend a lot of time with people from church, they're going to find out this or they're going to find out that. Well, if there's something in your life that you're afraid a member of the church is going to find out about, well, I can already tell you one member of the church knows about it. And if it's something that would, endanger your relationship with the church, then it probably already has, right? It's not something that if members of the church were to find out about it, it would hinder your relationship with the church. No, it already has. Because, you've got this thing that you're trying to hide from people, that you're trying to keep secret. You don't want people to find out, so you don't want close relations, close connections that might find out about this. Well, the head of the church, the one at the very top, he already knows. Your elder brother already knows. And if it's something that would endanger your relationship with the church, it already has. Okay? The way to fix it is to be more open. Doesn't Proverbs talk about sin being more readily accessible in isolation? Right? The one who keeps himself isolated, sin is never far from that person. It's because when we get alone and we think we're in secret, we do things that we wouldn't do, if we thought other people could see us, if we thought we were in front of other people. Well, we're always in front of God, aren't we? We're always in front of Christ. Always. He hears every word that comes out of our... He hears it in our heart before it comes out of our mouth. Right? He sees everything we look at even before we look at it. He knows every person we're associating with even before we connect up with that person. Right? So, that's not really... That's counterproductive, I'll put it that way. It's counterproductive to think, okay, if I keep myself isolated, and I know, I am... Sometimes I wish I had Wonder Woman's lasso. You know, that lasso she put around somebody and make that person tell the truth. Because I know if I had that lasso and I put it around certain people, they would say the reason I'm not more active with the church is because I don't want the church to find out what my personal life is like.
You know, I heard an example years ago. Steve Rogers did it in one of his sermons. And he talked about the assembly and why we need to be together.
Mm-hmm.
And he was using a charcoal grill
Mm-hmm.
as an example. And he says, whenever you're going to cook on that charcoal grill, you put all the coals together.
Right.
And once they get hot, it says you pull one of those coals off to the side and it dies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like what the church is.
Right.
If a member stays away from the assembly, stays away from the rest of the members, it dies. It may not die physically, but that member is in danger of dying and losing his soul. And that's the reason we need to be together.
Right. Yeah, I've heard Tommy Thomas use the illustration several times about a preacher that went to visit a wayward member, and they were sitting there in front of the fireplace, and the preacher reached over with the tongs and pulled a coal out of the fireplace and just set it on the hearth. And as they, continued visiting, they both kept watching that coal that he had set on the hearth, and pretty soon it died. And the guy said, "Preacher, I get the point. I'll be there Sunday." Right? And so that's true. When we get isolated, our fire goes out. Right? Our zeal dies when we isolate ourselves from each other. It's when we're together that we're strong. The example of the Tower of Babel, I think, is a powerful example. What did God say about the people gathered up there at the Tower of Babel? You remember what He said? They are all one, have the same mind, and what? Nothing shall be withheld from them. Now, what was the problem there that caused God to scatter them so that they weren't all, clumped up? What was the problem with it? Well, it was disobedience, because God told them to spread out, subdue the earth, be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth. Well, they all were clumped up. They were going to build this tower that was going to be their central point of unity to keep them all together. They were defying God's command to spread out, to encompass the earth, right? And so He confused their language so that they split up and divided out and went different directions. Okay? Isn't there a powerful lesson about unity there and being together? Why did God say nothing would be withheld from them? Because they were united. And when the church is divided up and squabbling and arguing, and is the church getting anything done? When there's these divisions that are causing schisms in the church? No. Right? There has to be unity. There has to be unity to actually be fruitful and to get things done. Right? So, We have to be careful about that. I never even read Acts chapter 20 and verse 7, and there's the first bell. All right, well, let me read Acts chapter 20 and verse 7, then I can say I covered at least one verse. I have given y'all many verses. I just haven't done it from the book. Now on the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul, ready to depart the next day, spoke to them and continued his message until midnight. So, what day was the church assembled together to hear Paul preach? It says to break bread. That's the Lord's Supper. And they heard Paul preach. It was the first day of the week, right? First day of the week. That's Sunday.
There's another reference to 1 Corinthians 16, verse 2.
Right. On the first day of the week, right?
Levi and Stoll, went on the first day of the week, because that's when they all began.
Right. And if you go back to chapter 11, and the context of 1 Corinthians 16 starts all the way back in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. And the context from chapter 11 through the end of the book is the assembled church, right? And he says there, when he's talking about the Lord's Supper, when you come together as the church, right? He says it's not to take the Lord's Supper. Well, he's not saying there that the purpose of the church coming together is not to take the Lord's Supper. He was rebuking them for their corruption of the Lord's Supper. And he says, when you come together as the church, is not to take the Lord's Supper. Well, his point there is that you have turned it into something else. They had turned it into basically a common meal where the rich people in the congregation had this elaborate spread and poor people in the congregation didn't have anything, and they weren't sharing with each other. They were using that as a point of division, like all the other points of division in the book. And so he says it's not to take the Lord's Supper. But he refers to when you come together as the church. Okay? So there is a when, right, that the church comes together as the church. And in the context of 1 Corinthians chapter 11 through 16, chapter 11 through chapter 16, when you see the when specified, when you come together as a church, it's the first day of the week. So when you come together as the church is the first day of the week. Now concerning the collection for the saints, as I have given orders to the churches of Galatia, so you must do also. On the first day of the week, let each one of you lay something aside, storing up as he may prosper, that there be no collection when I come. And so, as Frank said, the reason he says on the first day of the week there is because that's when the church was together to take up a collection, right? And so part of our worship to God is to show our love and devotion to God by giving to the cause of Christ, giving to the work of the church, right? Making a sacrifice for the work of the church, for the cause of Christ. And 2 Corinthians chapters 8 and 9 show that the collection is an act of worship. It is an expression of first giving ourselves to the Lord, as Paul says. And so that's part of our worship on the first day of the week. So we definitely have the first day of the week exemplified as the day of assembly for the New Testament church. So if we're going to be the New Testament church, that's when we have to come together, right? But as we said, that's not the only time we see the church together in the New Testament. They were together house to house. They had meals together every day. When they came together on the first day of the week, now this isn't really, well, I guess there in Acts chapter 20 and verse 7, the indication would be that Paul continued his message until midnight. When they came together as the church, they didn't come together for an hour or for a couple hours. They came together for the duration of the day, right? If the reason Paul continued his message until midnight was because the assembly was in the evening, well then the assembly would have been, between 6 to 7 probably, around sunset when the slaves were through with their work. And so, you're looking at, probably an assembly that gathered around 6 to 7 p.m. and was still going at midnight. right? They would have a meal together. They would spend hours together, not an hour, right? Okay. So those are things we need to think about when we talk about church attendance.